I have made the same terrible joke at the beginning of every review I've done for you, and I'm not making that mistake again. What is up, Netflix fans? Welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about how You Season 4 is drastically different from what we've seen so far from this show. I need to know down below, have you enjoyed it? And don't worry, we're not talking part 2 just yet. I actually have access to part 2. I am saving that. I want to have 1 through 5 fresh in my brain. Leave your thoughts and comments down below. If you enjoyed this review, let me know with a thumbs up, and let's do it. In Season 4, Joe is back as Jonathan, because this time he's on the other side of the pond. He's starting a new life in London with a new alias. He's a professor of English literature, but he also ends up mingling with members of the English capital's high society, which brings a whole new cast of characters into the mix, as well as one character titled Eat the Rich Killer, and Joe has a murder mystery on his hands. In Season 4, it's not a European holiday, it is much more sinister. As always, You is rated TV mature for sex and nudity, violence and gore, frightening images, and pretty much everything we have seen in other seasons. And you know what? The title of this video is probably going to be something along the lines of You Season 4 is really different. Compared to other seasons, we have shifted genres, we have brand new characters, and not just one or two, right? Pretty much across the board. Obviously, the return of Joe, I mean Jonathan, because after what happened at the end of Season 3, he had to go away and change his name, change his alias. Although there is one person in Marion that he still has interest in. How does that carry into Season 4? I'll be honest with you. I thought Tati Gabrielle was fantastic as Marion, but there is not a lot of this character in Season 4. And I mean at all. Essentially, the first episode of Season 4 is like what Episode 1 in Season 1 was. We're starting from scratch, except this time we are more in the head of Joe. Jonathan, I gotta keep calling him Jonathan. We've always gotten the voiceover. That's almost the shtick of the show at this point, but this time it is much more prominent because he is by himself throughout the first few episodes of this season. He's getting to know people, but allowing himself to be able to trust someone else, even if there's a tiny piece of him that, say, wants to have feelings for someone or wants to break down that wall, allow that person to be his friend. He is always judging the people he is encountering in this show, in this season specifically, for good reason, because especially in a situation like this, the further we get into it, you never know who you're going to be able to trust. And that's part of the mystery, that's part of the fun of Season 4, trying to find out who this killer really is, the Eat the Rich Killer, and whether the killer that we are trying to figure out as an audience, Jonathan is trying to figure out, is the person involved in all of the killings someone knows that he has a past. Someone is very aware that Jonathan is not who he says he is. Is that the killer? Is that someone else involved with the killings? That's up to us to find out. So there are 2 or 3 smaller mysteries at play, and then the big mystery of who is actually doing this, who is getting framed for doing it, and can we trust those around us? So again, we're talking almost a different show at this point, but trying to get us to like this character, played by Penn Badgley, is difficult. And look, there's no doubt in my mind that anyone who is still watching the show at this point loves his portrayal, loves his performance consistently throughout every single season. He is what keeps drawing you back, especially since the last 3 seasons, no one has really carried over from Season 1 to Season 4. So it really is him. He's carrying a lot of this on his shoulders. He does it once again here. But again, this time, I think he's carrying more of the load. I believe there is so much he has to do in Season 4 to keep us on board with this mystery, and what's happening in his head is not only is he becoming a more likable character, again, he's still not someone that I can fully root for because he's a serial killer. He's still a murderer. Not as much in Season 4 because he's having to solve this mystery. He's become almost like a Sherlock Holmes, right? We had Murder on the Orient Express, Glass Onion, Knives Out. It's that type of film. It's that type of TV show with this serial killer at the center, but he knows, because he's been there before, how these things work, how people that are involved in something like this operate. So we're almost given a different perspective, and to be able to root for a character or find yourself rooting for a character like that, knowing deep down that he is not well in the head, I think that adds an interesting dynamic to this show. And one thing I was concerned with You Season 4 about is, are they going to do the same old thing? Because it feels like Seasons 2 and 3, they just kind of did the same old thing. use season 4, whether you like the direction they go in or not. And I don't think everyone's going to like it because it does feel so different. I can sit here and feel satisfied that this is a very different season of television. They at least tried to go in a different direction. Did it work all the way? I think a big issue with season 4 is the fact that they don't allow you to know some of these side characters on the level that you should, and some of them are just so freaking snarky. And again, it's been an ongoing trend for the last several months. White Lotus, The Menu, Triangle of Sadness. It's looking at how the rich operate. And this time we're overseas, we're in a different area, so it's going to play out a bit differently, but just seeing how they treat those beneath them, how they treat each other, the lies, the consistent back and forth between characters that say they love each other, but at the same time, these relationships, the way they are playing out, especially when everyone's, getting a little drunk, doing little drugs, and then they start to express their real feelings, well, that's when Jonathan really gets some insight into who he's around, but he is suspectful that it's not someone from the outside committing these murders. He thinks that it's someone within this circle of friends that he has made at the beginning of this season. So he continues to infiltrate their parties, their events, but then he starts to make some actual relationships here. Whether something turns into a romance or not, again, it's mostly him, and that's not as much of a focus in season 4, which I kind of like, to be honest with you. That is always something that's going to be in the back of his mind. I don't know if I can trust these people, even if I really, really want to. The main people that we are dealing with here, we have Malcolm, Nadia, Adam, Sophie, Charlotte Ritchie as Kate. This is the side character I look at and I say, I don't only love the chemistry, I like her role in this show. I like how there is that mystery behind her as there is everyone else, but it's her personality, it's the way she works with Penn Badgley. I think the chemistry between the two is fantastic in this series, and the more time we spend with her, the more likable of a character she becomes, but it really is that relationship that is another element that keeps you going in season 4. Lady Phoebe, she has a relationship with Adam here, and they just can't get through to each other. They don't really understand how to operate, and Adam, he's that guy that comes into this rich crew, and he's like the spoiled American brat, and that's honestly how a lot of these characters are. They're kind of spoiled, they're kind of bratty. Some things that they're saying to Jonathan, and obviously it's supposed to be this way. It's supposed to make him feel angry and slightly uncomfortable, but they're saying something, and I'm sitting back like, are we supposed to think any of these characters are likable? Because all of them are so unlikable. At this point, I don't care who the killer is. I hope they all get their just desserts. And then there's a moment a bit later on in this batch of episodes where everyone's together in the same place, and it starts to become like what we have seen in a movie like Glass Onion just last year. People start to suspect each other for what's going down within this friendship bubble, right? And even if they like the friend that got murdered, they hate the friend that got murdered, that turns into chaos. And when we get to the finale, or the mid-season finale of season 4, again, we don't know what's going to happen in episode 6, even though I'll probably know right after I film this, because I'm curious. I'm going to go watch it. I'm not bragging. I sort of am. But it gets kind of malicious. There's this realm of realism that you're living in throughout all 4 seasons of You, and it has went outside of that bubble before. The events that we got in season 3, some things that they did were incredibly wild, right? But I thought season 4 held some of those moments that may have even pushed that a step further to where you have to suspend disbelief, but how long can I do that? And there were moments towards the end of episodes 4 and 5 where I'm kind of suspending disbelief on a level that I didn't feel entirely comfortable with. I'm like, I just don't know if something like that would happen. That being said, it's still really entertaining. And even through the first 2 or 3 episodes, I'm thinking to myself, okay, they're in a different place here, going in a different direction. Do I like it? I didn't know. But by the time we got to that cliffhanger in episode 5, and we've set up something that could bring everything together beautifully in the second half of the season, I am on board right now. And the more I thought about it, the more I just appreciated the fact that they're being different. I am going to give you my score. But before I do that, please leave your thoughts down below. Did you like part 1? For part 2, I'm going to do a spoiler-heavy review. So when you see my review, don't click on it if you haven't seen it. Instead of continuing on the same path, this season shifts genres, expectations, and the overall feel of the series. While certain changes don't entirely work, the murder mystery vibe plays extremely well with Badgley's outstanding performance at the center of the madness. Again, the show's cheesy at times. There are moments at the beginning where they use a green screen background and that doesn't look great. And maybe this isn't the best looking season, right? It's a little bit darker. The cinematography is not great, somewhat bland, but as a show that gets you sucked in and locked in on the mystery, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So as of now, and my score could change, I'm going to 78, we'll say 80%, because I think we're in a really good place. It all depends on where we go, where we end up. If it manages to bring it together, that score will stay. But if it doesn't, we could lower that to a 7 out of 10. Hopefully not anywhere below that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned. More reviews to come. I'm watching Magic Mike with my wife. She can't wait.